Welcome to the PFC podcast. I'm your host, Coach Mike Payton. I'm a certified personal trainer, and I'll be giving you tips and tricks on how to improve your overall fitness and help you make progress in the gym. Let's get right into the show. Machines or free weights? Which one's better? Let's break this down. So, machines or free weights? This is an interesting question. Generally, I will say that free weights are generally better. Now, with that said, machines have a place. Let's talk about what machines are really good for first, because I think that's going to be really important for this conversation. Machines are going to be really good for if you are afraid, if you're afraid of the gym. They're very self-explanatory, especially if you go in to the gym and you just try a machine. Like maybe you live 5 minutes away from the gym. Just walk into the gym if you have a membership and try a machine and then leave. You don't even have to like do a full workout. Like I give you permission to do that. You're allowed to do that. It's actually probably going to be more productive for you, and eventually you're going to be like, well, I should just work out, and it's just going to be better for you. But work up to it. So if you're really afraid of the gym, they can be a really great guide on how to move the weights. Or if you're just a really anxious person, and you're like, man, I don't want to do the exercises wrong. Machines can be a great place to start. I will not sit here and say that you should do them forever. But they have an application in getting you started because they're approachable, way more approachable than like, I don't know, a bench press where all the teenage boys with the broccoli hair are crowding it, or the squat rack, like everyone's afraid of the squat rack. At least a lot of people are. Yes. What I will say, if that's you, if you're afraid of those exercises, start with the free weights. But I would encourage you to try and overcome your fear of doing free weights, because free weights are really great for a lot of reasons. But I want you to know that like they're not dangerous. Generally, you can move in an intuitive way, and you're not necessarily going to do it wrong. Now, if you put a lot of weight on there, you might hurt yourself, but don't put a lot of weight on there and you'll be all right. Slowly over time, add more weight. The odds of you hurting yourself if you do that are very, very, very low. Weight training is actually one of the least dangerous like sports, if you will, to do. The injury risk is it's lower than a lot of other athletic pursuits. So if you want to stay healthy and you want to have a low risk of injury, weight training is going to be your best friend. Well, let's talk about what free weights are for. Free weights are really good for a lot of reasons. They work very similarly to a lot of things that we interact with in our everyday lives. So like a squat, the same mechanics of a squat you're going to use to pick up things off the floor, or sit down on the toilet, or sit down on your couch. They're generally pretty applicable to everyday things. The same way that you do a deadlift, you're going to be picking things up off the floor or picking up your kid off the floor, or um, what have you, you know. An overhead press, the way that the body functions whenever you lift your arm overhead is going to be the same with weights or with no weights. The way the muscle functions is very, very similar. So if you're thinking about functionality, weights like free weights are going to be a lot better functionally, um, in a lot of ways, because of what I've just said. But if you think about, so there's two different types of like muscle contraction. There's what we call an eccentric, or like a slow descent, or I should say a descent, or a lengthening contraction, and then there's a like shortening contraction, which is the concentric. Um, and the way you function in your everyday life is with that eccentric and concentric, and there's going to be like a strength curve. There's going to be a point in the motion where it's going to be the hardest and where it's going to be the easiest. And that's just how we tend to function in everyday life. There's not really a whole lot where you're trying to accelerate through a whole range of movement, unless you're an athlete. If you're an athlete, that's a different story. Or if you competitively lift weights, that's a different story. But for your everyday person, you tend to move that way, and so it's really important to train that way. You don't really get that with machines. Machines have a constant tension, that doesn't really change. Now that can be really good for, like I said, athletes. Athletes tend to do better with what we call accommodated resistance. But or if you're a bodybuilder, or you're trying to train for hypertrophy, those are going to be things like machines can be your best friend because they keep a constant tension. They increase what we call the time under tension, which can be really, really good for muscle growth. So if you're trying to build a lot of muscle, that can be a really great place to go, is machines. But if you're an everyday person, you're the average person, and you just want to keep your joints healthy, you want to stay active for a long time, just use free weights. Free weights are going to be your best friend. Another great thing about free weights is they're very dynamic. So you can change the direction of movement, you can change how you move because they're not locked into a certain exercise like a lot of machines are. The only exception to that with machines is cables. We'll get into cables near the end of this, but free weights, you can do lunges, you can do lateral lunge, you can do a twisting lunge, you can do a curtsy lunge, you can do overhead press, you can do Arnold press, you can do a windmill. Like there's so many different things that you can do with a pair of dumbbells. So if you're trying to work out at home, free weights are going to be your best friend. They're very dynamic. They're very useful. And you can do a lot of different things with them. So if you're trying to get the most bang for your buck, free weights are going to be your best friend. If you, another reason that I really love free weights is not only do they train those major muscle groups, but they also help to train your body to stabilize. They help to train stabilization. So take a bench press, for an example. You can do it. Here's some steps of stabilization. The easiest one with no stabilization would be a Smith machine bench press, because the Smith machine, it's on a track. It takes care of everything for you. Now, the next one over would be the actual bench press. It requires a lot less stability, or a lot more stability than the Smith machine bench press. but yet less stability than a dumbbell bench press. A dumbbell bench press, the weights are literally free floating. You have to stabilize the dumbbells. So there's a progression there, but also um, the training stability is going to be really good for a lot of different things. If you're trying to build strength, if you're trying to build healthy joints, if you're trying to be active for a long time, stability is going to be your best friend. A lot of times, as you age, stability becomes it's one of the first things to go. That's why you see a lot of old people with balance problems for a multitude of reasons, but one of them being stability. Stability goes out the window, and that has a lot to do with muscular endurance and strength that you train if you use free weights. So for a lot of reasons, free weights are better, but machines have a place. I wouldn't just go and say machines never. I've used machines with clients. I've used machines myself, and they can be really good depending on what you're training for. Now let's talk about cables. Cables are an interesting thing. They're probably the exception to a lot of the things that I said. So if you're sitting here and you're the skeptical type like I am, you're like, well, what about cables, Mike? Well, cables are very dynamic. They also give you a lot of bang for your buck. They also have the time under tension component, so they keep that tension the whole time. So if you have like a lagging muscle group that you're like, I want to train that, how do I do that? Cables can actually be a really, really great idea. But like I said, if you're trying to be super functional with it, functional being like applicable to everyday life, you're gonna not necessarily have that with cables, but cables are still good for a lot of reasons. So if you they're a really good machine. How about that? It's one of the best machines. That one and maybe the leg press are my two favorite machines that I'll use with almost everyone. I'll use at some point in their training. I will use a cable or a leg press machine. So if you've never done that before, I would try it, like a leg press or a cable machine. Yeah, let's. I'm going to back up a little bit to, and I want to talk to the person who is anxious about the gym. I made other episodes on this, but start somewhere. Okay, I know the gym is scary. I know that there's huge muscular dudes in there who are really energetic, or maybe they're intimidating. Maybe there's some really crazy ladies in there who are jacked out of their minds, or they're really fit and they seem really into it. I know that can be really scary. But I'll tell you right now, those people, they had to start somewhere. They started just like you. They've made it to where they are. And I would venture to say that most of them, if not all of them, will be supportive of you starting as well. And the benefit of finding a gym where there are a lot of really fit people is they're usually the most supportive of new people in the gym, actually. If you go to a Planet Fitness or the Y, you see some of those people, but like the atmosphere isn't really there. But if you go to like a rinky dink, like ragtag powerlifting gym in the middle of nowhere, a lot of times you'll find like the most fit people, but like they love it when there's new people in there and trying new things and lifting weights for the first time or your fifth time, you're just starting out. and they're generally pretty darn supportive. Um, so don't be afraid to go into the gym, try things out. Don't be afraid to do things wrong. And also don't be afraid to ask for help. If you're like, I have no idea what the heck this machine does, but this guy's jacked out of his mind and he's standing there waiting in between his sets, just be like, hey, you can be as awkward as you want. Just be like, hey, uh, how do you use this machine? You know, they don't care. They're in the middle of their workout, like, uh, and I'm sure they'll be happy to help you. Like, I don't know, if somebody stopped me in the gym, I was like, hey, how do I use this machine? I'd be like, oh yeah, heck yeah, I'm glad to tell you how to use this machine. I've had people stop me in the gym and ask me about their Achilles pain, I'm happy to help them. And I'm definitely not the only one. So don't be afraid. Just try something. Try something new. Um, if this episode helped you, please follow me on Spotify here. Please follow the podcast. If you like what I do and you like what I talk about, please follow me on Instagram, and that would be Coach Mike Payton on Instagram. On Facebook, it'd be Michael Payton, and on YouTube, also Coach Mike Payton.